Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer. This is Strange Mosaic. This is show number 2 of the day for me. It is election day, so there's got to be some kind of shit.
Oh, yeah.
I've mostly managed to ignore all of that, but my two buddies, Benjamin Balderson and SB Alger, are here to shoot the shit with me. And we're wishing Jim a very happy honeymoon. He was supposed to have been here. Ben is standing in for him because he's like holding hands or something. I don't know. I'm not going to go any further into that. It's a secret, apparently. But you guys are here, and this one's just going to be shoot the shit, free flower. Maybe we'll stumble upon the meaning of life and everything else as well. So welcome back. Welcome back to you, Ben. But Sean, SB, Scene, whoever you are, you and I have had chats, and I've been on Weaving Spiders with you, but this is the first time you're here. So welcome to Strange Mosaic. It's nice to have you.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for inviting us. And yeah, it's a good reason to miss if you have to be secretly holding hands, for Jim. So, and we'll have to just postpone and excuse him for now and get back together some other time, because I like the idea of, I do love it anytime me and Jim get a mutual invite naturally. Because, like a lot of the times if somebody invites me and it seems like it's has anything to do with things that me and Jim have already done, like picture show or whatever else, I'll double check with him. Like, do you want me to bring Jim? Like, you really just want to talk to me? And sometimes people do, I'm always confused when anyone invites me anyway, but I guess, people like to listen to me run my mouth, I guess. So.
When I hear SB Alger, I don't know why, but every time something in the back of my mind goes DB Cooper, right?
Oh, all right. I have got no problem with that. That's a fine association, in my opinion. If you want to imagine me as someone who got away with a huge heist and like landed in the desert or in the jungle somewhere and rode away on a little mini bike with like $250,000 and was never seen again, sweet. That's fine. I'm good with it. Of course, I mean, that's the fantasy story. Who knows what really happened? I haven't looked at it for a long time, but.
So there's not too many of our peers who like go by a name like that, right? I think there's like one guy that Randy used to interview. I think his name was like LB Bork or something. He talks about like constitutional shit or something like that, right? And he goes by the Jurist now. I think he changed his public name or whatnot. But I can't too many of our peers that have that. So whenever I hear something like that, my mind first goes to DB Cooper. We just watched like a docu-series this past year. There's a new one is it on Netflix? About DB Cooper. That was kind of interesting, right? It went through all these, like all of the different conspiracies and whatnot. And then also just sort of went to all the, there's still conventions that get together where they like talk about the DB Cooper, like a lot of excitement about it. And it also it dawned.
It's the one that got away.
Right.
Literally the one that got away. That's why it's okay with me. If that's the association that I could potentially be also the one that got away, that's okay.
But it also I'm wondering about its connection, because David Lynch is funny like this, about its connection to Agent Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks, because he looks just like the drawing.
Huh.
Yeah, that's true.
I knew a Dan Cooper that also looked like DB Cooper. His name was Dan, and I used to always give him shit and ask him what his middle name was. And the guy, he always had the craziest stories about flying helicopters in the Army back in the day and shit like that. And you're like, uh-huh.
Was there a guy named Dan Cooper who was one of the people considered in that show? I feel like there was. I feel like one of the threads was a guy named Dan Cooper.
Yeah, this guy totally would have been it. He was something else. He died a few years ago. Really cool guy though. Never seen anybody that would do some of the shit this guy did.
All right. So I've told you what I think about when I first think of you, Sean, and then Ben. I have to tell you this, right? Of all of our colleagues that of people who inhabit this weird realm that we exist in, universally people love you. I have never heard anyone say anything but nice things about you. All different kinds of people, right? Like when they meet you, they're just like, He's exactly like completely as presented. He's so sweet. He's nice. He looks like a tough guy, but he's a whatever. I've never met anybody who had like, they're all like, they always just like, that's one of the first things they want to tell me after they meet you is how much they like you. So congratulations. You win the award for the most liked person in our thin layer of reality here. Yeah. Everyone
I try to be nice.
You are nice, but
you're a genuine article.
Well, I think you're exactly who you are all the time, which I think people appreciate, which I think this confuses a lot of people. Like there's some people who, and it's sometimes not even intentional. There's some people who just present in real life very, very different than they present on camera or on voice. Sometimes it's intentional. Sometimes they really do have like a layer of bullshit going on, but other times that's just how this medium is. It is a medium, right?
Yeah.
So I think people appreciate that there's the high fidelity there, right? Where it comes across as you are, but also like you deal in the kind of arts that feels mysterious to people. And so sometimes when they meet people who deal in that kind of arts, there's like a weird vibe or some sort of like juju that might be funny or different than expected or whatever. And, like you're smart and you're serious and you take these things, like you really understand them. But then like when you meet you're also fun and smiley and goofy and all of this kind of stuff. And it takes the edge off of people feeling like they don't know as much as you, or they have to be concerned because you know more than they do, right? People are weird like that. Nobody really likes to feel like they know less than the people that they're surrounded by, even if we all pretend that we love learning, So.
Right. And people do that because like, you'll be knowledgeable in one area and somebody else will be knowledgeable in another. And so there's a disparity. And just so you know, Emily, that's the reason I chose, I've always gone by Sean Alger because that's my name, but I chose SB when I was really young. I told myself if I ever published books or anything, I would intentionally be pretentious like other authors that I loved and use my initials. That was like, J.R.R. Tolkien and all these people, so I'll be SB Alger. And what you said about having knowing that you have a persona because you're intentionally using the simulacra of internet, not everybody thinks about it, but this isn't reality. We're simulating reality right now and recording it. You're going to broadcast it later. So it's something different. And so to me, it's like a tip of the hat to myself. Like, okay, you're being this version of yourself. Right. It's not that I'm any different than Sean. I'm still, if people call me Sean, it doesn't bother me. Obviously, that's me. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't really mean anything to me other than that, to me, this is the same as deciding that I'm going to publish stuff. Like, it's no different than if I wrote books or anything else. And so I'm SB Alger. That's who I said I would be. Here I am, And you
got your button down sweater to prove it. There you go.
That's right. That's right. And I did just buy this hat, so I was excited to get this on the air on your show too.
So if I didn't know where you lived, I would think that you were being a promoter of like what is it called? What is the Real ID 2020? or whatever?
Oh, right. Yeah, totally, yeah. Please sign
I've been
up
hearing
for the
advertisements
program.
for that again on the radio.
Yeah,
Real ID, yeah. Well, the voting, of course, that's a big part of their little voting thing. Is that they're in my opinion, they're intentionally casting all this huge doubt and dispersion on all the voting stuff and making it a big hullabaloo.
Yeah.
Because it moves people in a direction one way or the other. And then they can say, oh, well, there really is a problem. It's been a few elections now, and we definitely have, the other side will eventually come out and say, well, maybe they were right. There were a few problems. And one thing we can agree on is that we all need this fancy little ID that everyone can verify, blah, 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 or whatever,
It's funny like that. Okay, well, there's tons of stuff going on with this, right? So the reason you're hearing those commercials, again, Ben, is just because it's time to renew the PSYOP, right? So they PSYOPed us with this 2 years ago, saying that if you didn't get it by the end of the year, you wouldn't be able to fly with just your driver's license. You'd have to have a passport. Yeah. So all of us either made sure our passport was renewed on time so we wouldn't have to get the real ID, or we were just like, well, fuck it, I guess I'm not going anywhere. And then apparently, and I just found this out now because now Laura's passport expired. So she's thinking that like, okay, she's not going to be able to fly because she doesn't have a real ID. But you go on the website, it says now like, no, it has to be by December of 2023 or whatever. It's like, wait a second, they already ran that trick it's never going to be. They're just going to keep telling you it has to be.
Yep.
Just like the fucking pokeroonie. Like there was never any law. There was never really any rule. Yeah. All that stuff. But if they reserve the right to trick as many people as they can into doing it with their nonsense, right?
Yeah.
So it's time to renew that PSYOP. And then what you were saying about the voting.
Oh,
I haven't voted.
I interrupted there. Sorry.
Okay.
We're all good.
I haven't voted in so long that I don't really think about or pay attention to this, but it is fucking funny because you have lots of people who don't want to have to give their ID on the crypto exchanges, people on the right and all this kind of stuff, but they're perfectly happy to demand that everybody show their ID to fucking vote, right? Yeah. So this is where you get like, despite all of her shortcomings, she's exactly right, and she just has a bigger platform than I do, although we've all been saying this for a long time. Alison McDowell, they're going to lure, right? Like they're not going to be able to lure the people on the right or the Christians or the libertarians or whatever with the idea of vaccine passports, but there'll be the same idea presented as like a way to like with crypto that like, you know, thing, a way that people can maximize their whatever kind of thing, right? They're going to it's just like the reversible jacket. Everything is a fucking reversible jacket to me at this point. Right?
Yeah, you just got to fish with the right worm.
Yeah.
Started that way with the Federal Reserve System. They ran the act as one thing, and then they turn around when they pushed it through successfully. It was almost identical thing, only they flipped the title and the name around on it. But if you look at the two, documents that they sent in there, like they ran it once and it got knocked down, and so they just like, well, let's just rebrand it. We'll change 5 things and we'll change the name, especially so it seems like what they want. And, and it totally works. You're seeing it on Twitter right now, too. I'm on Twitter. And so Elon's banging his gavel that he's going to charge everybody $8 to have their blue check mark.
Right.
And of course, the whole idea, before he relented and bought Twitter, like if you even believe that, he actually spent almost $50 billion on Twitter. The whole idea was that he cast a bunch of doubt on how real it was because of how many bots there are, which of course is true. The whole internet's full of bots. And now the way to solve that horrible bot problem, of course, is for everyone to somehow be verified as who they really are, and take the anonymity out of the internet,
Anybody can get a blue check now, but we just have to verify, and it's going to cost you $8 for us to do a background check and a facial scan, right? Yeah. But I have to say, I saw the best Elon's tweet yesterday. Like, I don't trust him. Anybody who trusts him is an idiot. I don't like.
But it's still funny,
right? Fucking God himself could run Twitter, and I still would be like, this sounds like Project Bluebird to me because that's exactly what it is, right? But it is fun to watch him troll everybody, right? And so some YouTube channel I follow said it was pretty funny that Elon Musk literally paid $44 billion just to troll the left, right? And his I can't now, but it literally
that's classic.
It literally said people who use they, them pronouns on their bio will be charged $16 for verification. Identifying as multiple people. And I was like, you know what? Yes. Right? It's exactly like Donald Trump. I don't trust Donald Trump. I don't think that Donald Trump is anything other than out for himself and in on the whole thing. But the entertainment value is so high that it's like, bring it on.
Here.
100%.
Yeah. I was shocked when Trump got elected.
Funny. We know you're acting like a piece of crap, but at least make it funny.
That's right. Yeah, if you'll make it funny, we'll actually kind of, in a subtle way, we'll kind of support you because we're getting something. It doesn't mean we'll actually throw any support behind you. Of course, we don't trust you. Just the same as, I might enjoy watching Hulk Hogan come out of retirement and wrestle, but I'm in no way going to believe that there's anything to it, because I'm not stupid. I know what it is,
Yeah.
I also know he's not going to climb up on the top ropes because he doesn't have it in him anymore. And that's kind of how I see Trump nowadays, too, like, I don't know. Do you guys think they're going to bring him out and have him run for the presidency again as old man Trump?
Well, I think he trolled everybody last night because they were like, nobody watched any of the like regular speeches people were giving as part of their getting ready to be elected or voted on today. And everybody was watching the Trump rally because people had been tweeting out that he was going to announce that night, right? Or whatever. So I don't know. Like, I cannot fit, like, this is one of those things that is like, I mean, anybody who says that we like know a lot more since we've been like researching everything and paying so much attention for the last 25 years than we did before is fucking lying, right? Like, I'm fucking more bewildered and lost now. When I was born, I knew everything, and now I'm like a dumb fuck just trying to figure it out like everybody else, right? Like it's Benjamin Button, right?
Yeah. Oh, you guys said it best on that one episode with what's his name, Lex. I don't remember the guy Lex. He's
Lex
on
Friedman?
Twitter too. Yeah. No, is that right? No, he was on your show.
Lez Luthor.
Yeah, Lez Luthor.
I was gonna say, you had Lex Friedman on? I was about shitting over here. I was like, wow.
I'm about
fucking impressive.
I'm about to do an epic anal probe on Lex Friedman with Danny this week.
Good.
Nice.
He needs it. You'll feel better when you're done.
So he lives right near me here in Austin, and I passed him on the trail one day. Like, he was coming one way and I was going the other way. And the only thing more painful than listening to him talk is watching him run.
That's great.
Right? It's like,
but you guys were calling it chicken scratch. That's what I was going to say.
Oh,
is that you were calling the way that we're served out everything, this overwhelming amount of information that seems to increase month by month now instead of year by year, how much shit they try to dump on us all the time, new stuff, different stuff, updates on old stuff, new angles on old stuff. It's all just chicken scratch. They're just throwing us a bunch of scratch to peck at, and they just keep throwing us more, and that's it. And there's not, we all know anyway, people who've done real deep dive bullshit.
People actually apply this information less and less.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's just an overwhelming dump of information that they never have time to sit and start placing in their life and make use with. So at some point, it doesn't even fucking matter. It doesn't even matter if it's good information. It's useless.
Yep.
I'm
guilty of that myself.
Have either of you spoken with Lez? Do either of you know Lez?
No, I mean, I think I tweeted at him right after that episode. I really enjoyed that, and I thought I sent you a message. And who was it? Was it Lindsay that was on there with you?
Nish.
Oh, Nish. Yeah. So, and I sent her something. Like, it triggered me to remember some piece of content or something that and so I sent her. You know how it is. Like, you get that manic moment of like, oh, that was awesome, I'm gonna reach out and get in touch with these people, and then that's it, then it pitters out.
Like, was it an AT&T or what was the reach out and touch someone company commercial?
I think that's right. I think it was AT&T.
Remember all the like nostalgic Hallmark moments? Yeah.
Yeah, you're calling your grandpa because he had his kidney transplant, and you're crying, and he's picking up the phone in the hospital, and reach out and touch someone.
So I remember when that was a way bigger deal, when like a phone call was a giant deal. Like, I remember even when we'd have to go down to the payphone and my mom would take like a whole roll of quarters out of the laundry thing. Because, you had the quarters set aside for laundry, and we'd go make a call to like grandma or somebody.
Yeah.
Like, everybody would stand around this payphone in a little huddle, waiting to just hear them couple words and, get their 2 cents in.
Yeah.
And now these young people, if you call them, they freak out on you. They like want to write you a ticket.
Well, I remember when if I had a friend who lived long distance, my dad would be like 10 minutes, right? Kind of thing,
10 minutes? Ooh, you were uptown. Holy shit. That was like $390.
Could have been. Oh, you guys, I could tell you a story. Oh my gosh. I used to have a long distance girlfriend in Australia, and I used to buy phone cards.
Right.
And so, and we would stay up all night on the phone, but one time I got drunk and stayed at a friend's house, these two girls I knew, and I got drunk, and like I was, I knew what I was doing, but I was drunk enough that I didn't give a fuck. And so I called this girl and talked to her all night, and they sent them like a $1,600 phone bill. They were going to kill me, and I got on the phone with the phone company and haggled it down. I think I paid them $350, but yeah. like a $1,600, you know, for me to be a drunk bastard and talk to my Australian girlfriend for 4 hours, you know.
At the time, it was like, probably even if you would have known, you'd have still like, just give me 5 more minutes, and it still would have lasted the phone call, right? Like,
that's right.
We've all been there, right? What was I gonna? So I was gonna tell you about Lez is a trip, dude. Right? Like, I'm surprised that more people haven't chatted with him or had them on their show, on their show.
Yeah, I'd love to get him on Spiders. I mean, I think he'd be a great fit over there.
Yeah, he's in England, so but I'm sure he's in England and he works on the weekend. He only works on the weekend. But probably if you put it far enough out, you know what I mean? He can talk about anything, right? He can talk about anything. And it was like really weird the way he sort of came into my orbit, right? Like, because I was literally on like a right-wing trash rag news, revolver.news, right? Which has some interesting things, but it's mostly like for entertainment value that I look at it. And, you know, there was a link to a Twitter thread where somebody, like, the day one of the Ukraine thing basically disproved the whole thing. And I was like, wow, this is hilarious. This is great. I talked about it in all my shows and da-da-da-da-da. And finally, I got this message, a Patreon message. Like, I can't take the ears burning anymore because I talked about him so many times. He's like, I've been dying to have a conversation with you. And he'd been a patron of mine for years. So it took me like,
oh, wow.
Nice.
right on the, kind of, and how I deal with information had sort of inspired his view on things, which sort of led to, it was kind of fascinating, right? Like, I was like, okay. And apparently someone said, yeah, like, before I did the show with him, they heard him talking about me on Nish's show. The only people's shows he's been on really is like me and Nish and one other person. And I was like, he knows me? And like, it was like weird, right?
Right.
But he is very, like, it's fascinating how the way he sort of presents what he presents really fucking rubs some people the wrong way. Even people in our groups who think they're super advanced and they've worked through all of their, like, oh, no, everything is fake, but this one that I like is real, right? Like, that they think they've worked through the last ones of those. And when he comes and says some, like, like, obviously, like, the Ukraine one is pretty basic for most of us, right? But he does, like, no matter how much we all think that we're, like, as black-pilled as you can be, we all hold on to one sacred cow that we're, like, not willing to let go of.
Yeah, it's true. We still have attachments. It's a lifelong journey to try to really, truly let go of attachments. And you can work on it all you want, but there's still something that someone says something, you go, no. Nuh-uh.
And he'll walk
the chick from Sound of Music.
I didn't hear you. What'd you say, Ben?
Mine's the chick from Sound of Music.
Julie Andrews?
Yeah, Julie Andrews.
Yeah. What did somebody try and tell you, like, she was not real or she was a man or something like that? Like, what was
not buying any of it. Not buying any of it. She's an angel.
See, to me, this is a perfect example of like, people in what we call conspiracy or high strangeness realms. They really fall into the habit of looking down on other people because, we've got privy knowledge, we've figured shit out and everyone else is still asleep or whatever. And I'd say the main thing people get accused of is just what Ben just did on purpose. Like, nope, I'm going with intentional cognitive dissonance here.
Right.
No, right. You can't touch my sacred cow. Get away from it. You're not making any sacred hamburgers. I love that thing, and you're not going to poke at it, And I've got
beautiful
friends
cow.
I've got normies that are that way. They're like, don't talk about flat earth or dinosaurs around me. Don't fuck up my life. Just shut up. I love that stuff. I like space and I like dinosaurs, so no talking,
That's funny. I was just talking about those two. We went out to dinner and drinks with my friend Kathy, like, the other night. And my friend Kathy she's been my friend for more than 20 years. And I know her from the rave scene here in Austin, round one with myself, right? She's a fantastic drum and bass DJ, and she's always been super well known in the scene. But back then, it's hilarious because back then I remember, like, she was like somewhat conspiracy minded and probably like knew a lot more about metaphysics and the invisible world than I than I did, for sure, and used to talk about that stuff. And I remember in, like, 2002 or 3 or sometime around then, like her telling me that like she was considering voting for Mike Huckabee because of, he was promoting a 15% flat tax, right? And at that point, like, you know, while I was already like into some psychedelics and had already figured out that like, you know, okay, there's what they tell you is going on and there's what's really going on, and they aren't the same thing. I hadn't been made aware yet of all the things we're aware of now. And so I was speaking a different language, and I was definitely still a libtard. So like, I'm sitting there going like, this bitch is crazy. She had to vote for Mike Huckabee, right? And what's hilarious now is like, now she's like complete loony lefty. I love her dearly, but like, she's just like pleading with people to vote and make sure you vote blue because Greg Abbott left you in the cold 2 winters ago when there was all this like very emotional kind of stuff. And she's like lefty loony. And she doesn't even remember that conversation where she told me that she was going to vote for Mike Huckabee. And in those people's minds, if you don't vote because you're an anarchist, you're somehow like totally a MAGA Republican, right? Kind of thing. So she has me over there with them, and now all conspiracies are kind of ridiculous. She can get down with like my psychedelic visions and thoughts and fancies and stuff still because she likes to eat acid and all that kind of stuff, right? But she like we got into a conversation about dinosaurs aren't real because she was telling me that she bought a new dress and it's a dinosaur dress. Like it's a dress that has dinosaurs all over it. And she was saying that when she bought it, like all the reviews were talking about like how great this dress is for teachers because the children really like her dress because they're a dinosaur, like elementary school, right? So somehow that led into a conversation about like the dinosaurs not being real. And like, that's not one that I really care about one way or another. I spent like almost no energy. I think I listened to Eddie Bravo talk about it one time. And then I was like, okay, I guess whatever. I don't care about it. Right.
It's one of the only ones I disagree with people on because I've actually dug up dinosaurs.
Okay.
Like, but they aren't giant like what they try and make out on Hollywood.
Right.
But like in South Dakota, the largest, most complete T-Rex ever found was found out in a farmer's field out in Faith, South Dakota, along with two other ones. And then right over by there's what presumably must have been a lake that kind of went dried up because then there's this crevice where the water would have been the deepest, and all the water dinosaurs are in that crevice, and they all died in that crevice. So the woolly mammoths.
How big were they?
The woolly mammoths?
No, the T-Rexes.
The T-Rexes? Not that huge. Like it's really not that big. It's I'd say like 7 feet tall or something. If you cut its tail off, it was probably the size of like a large crocodile or something. It was just bipedal.
All right.
You know, just
Sean, he said it was Julie Andrews. It's not. It's fucking dinosaurs. He won't let go of the idea that they're
well, to me, like this always opens the door for the idea that one of the things I talk about is them paralleling things, and so that they'll come up with an almost identical story to the truth that they would prefer not to be out there, and then they'll
Veering.
Right, Veering, yeah, Ben calls it Veering. I love that call because Veering is true. That's what they do. So there is some kind of truth that they would prefer not just out there. You know, we all see that, and if you get too close to certain truths, you can be in danger or be attacked. You know, end up on the targeted individual list or worse, right? And we've all seen that. We know that, from personal experience. But so they'll create a parallel story that's almost identical, omit and or change information that's pertinent. And that's what I think that they've done with dinosaurs. I don't think it's just that they're like, they didn't whole cloth invent the idea that there's creatures that used to exist that no longer exist. They went and invented some and changed them, like Ben said, exaggerate them, kind of dramatize them, make them into something. Like the best example I found, the reason I know about this is there was a lady named Linda Kennedy. She was a Christian attorney, and there was this guy named Peter Kawaja, and he exposed a whole bunch of hardcore shit about chemical weapons manufacturing going on in Boca Raton, Florida. And the government sent out this agent named Joyce Riley. She used to have a radio show for years.
I remember her.
Hour.
Yep.
Right. So Joyce Riley was assigned to parallel Peter Kawaja's story.
Yep.
And they changed his story from being him discovering the manufacture of weapons-grade cyanide in Boca Raton, Florida, so they changed it from chemical weapons to biologicals. And then they added all of this fluff of literally what we're seeing now with the cowpoke stuff, Oh, it's going to lie dormant, and then everyone's going to be contagious, and the government's going to have the only antidote, and everyone's going to, all this shit that we've been seeing for years, just like V for Vendetta, right? Like right out of the movie. And so that was what Joyce Riley brought. But if you went and you could parse Kawaja's original information away from what she brought, it was like shocking expose of serious hardcore shit, because what he did is he ran like a security company, and they had tapped him to be security on this place where they were going to do this, and they didn't realize that he was going to like do massive surveillance on them once he realized that they were doing shit that was out of line. So he started tapping all the phones, fucking recording everything, photocopying documents and stacking it all. And then he had it all. And I think in the long run, about 2004, 2005, I think they had to kill him off because they couldn't bait him out, because he was affiliated with, he was military. He was ex-military, and he only hired ex-military guys. So it became a real problem, a manageability issue for the actual government, So that's where the whole paralleling idea first came to me, because that woman, Linda Kennedy, who also vanished off the internet years ago, and nobody knows what the fuck happened to her. For all we know, she's dead. But she had a podcast way back, and before they even called it a podcast, she just used to publish stuff where you would have to download the MP3 and play it on your own player. Yeah, back in Blog Talk Radio, or Talk Shoe, back in the day. And so she had all of these disinformation strategies and stuff that she discovered because she got disbarred as a lawyer in Virginia, because she was dumpster diving on judges and other attorneys and pulling out wet ink documents and proven forgery. And she was bringing this shit right into the courts and be like, "Nuh-uh, you guys are lying, because I went and jumped in I broke the lock off your dumpster and jumped in there, and I've got your shit." And well, they disbarred her, and she wouldn't stop. And so she was the one that figured out Kawaja's stuff, and she separated the Joyce Riley shit away from his real information. And they weren't friends or didn't know each other. They had an interview like one time, and like the weirdest, it was the first time I ever heard people come out with voice imitation shit and everything. You know how they do nowadays, you can imitate anybody. If me and Emily had enough money, we could make a video of Ben doing whatever we want, because that software is available. It's out here. We could get it done. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. But Kawaja was gone, and then all of a sudden he came back, and he was doing all these radio shows with people who formerly would have been his enemies, and he was saying a bunch of shit that was contradicting and going back on things that he had said before. So it's like, this isn't right. Well, then, Linda Kennedy's like, that's because that's not him, because they're using voice software that's imitating him, and they're having somebody else pretend to be him. You sound crazy. You sound like a schizophrenic when you say that shit in 2004, right. But we all know it's true now. They do this shit. They do it all the time. And who knows how they might have been doing it since the 60s. We don't know,
All right. So a couple things I want to say. So back to Ben's dinosaur fantasies. All right. I'm actually with you. Like, I think that what I was explaining to Kathy, right, is like, you get something dumb like dinosaurs never existed or aren't real.
Right.
Because of what they did with space and NASA. Right. Because people have figured out that NASA has never shown us a real picture of the Earth from the moon, that they're all composites. Then, oh, look, they did it with the dinosaurs, right? Which is probably also part intentional, right? And then we can just make such a colossal array of bullshit that everyone will be so confused and whatever.
Right. And then we all look stupid when we talk about something real too, because they're like, "Oh my God, those people don't believe in dinosaurs or birds."
Right.
Because or Australia.
Right. Because they give us replicas of dinosaurs in the museums, it's like very Eddie Bravo to be like, "Yo, dude, they're replicas," and like, not even go any further than that. And that is true. So then there you are. But to you, the way you described the dinosaurs, I feel like I listened to like some Native American one time talking about, I don't know if I'm accidentally blending two stories in one, or if or that they were separate stories, but I heard a Native American person give an account of like a T-Rex that was like, they called it a small T-Rex, like the size of a man, just a normal size of a person, right? And I feel like it was part of a story in which they also talked about why Native Americans don't like to have their picture taken. I feel like I may be confusing these into, it wasn't because of the T-Rex, but the person was talking about how Native Americans don't like to have their photos taken because once that simile of you exists and it can be used to penetrate you or to project your, to do funny business.
Right.
I feel like there was a whole story being told, and part of it was something about the pictures, but part of it was something about this person took a picture of a Native American, even though they didn't really want it. And somehow in the background of this picture, there was this small T-Rex or whatever it was, or something like that. Right. So
I almost bought a T-Rex skull once.
Yeah.
Like it was a partial. It was $8,000. I was at the 75th Sturgis, and a guy got offered the motorcycle that he was just insane over and needed money, and he offered, and he came to me and was talking to me about buying this T-Rex skull, and he wanted $8,000. Well, it didn't end up going through or nothing. I was like, I'm calling home. I'm like, get money out the bank right now.
That's right. We're gonna buy a T-Rex skull, so go to the bank for me now.
Right? Yes, this is definitely
right now.
This is definitely the one. We've definitely exposed Benjamin's soft spot here, right? For sure. As to your,
I understand though, because if you lived over there where they've been digging, and you've definitely seen lots of bones come out of the ground.
I'm kidding. I
know, but your opinion becomes, it's not that it's all the way on one side, but real life, we all know how it is. Real life experiences changes everything.
Changes everything.
If you've never done LSD and mushrooms, then you probably shouldn't talk to the three of us about your ideas of what it means, because we have. So you don't know what you're talking about.
Yes. Yes. So it's like, my favorite is like these guys who present at psychedelics conferences who take 2 grams of mushrooms.
Yes.
2 grams. Yes.
Kalindi's presenting in the back room, and he does fucking 50 grams at a time, but he's pushed off to the side while like Daniel Pinchbeck and Michael Pollan are comparing notes about their life-changing 2 gram trip.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, back to your paralleling, right? Or veering is another word, but I like
veering. I like veering.
So you're dealing with information the same way. Are you guys familiar with the concept of parallel construction in law enforcement? You guys familiar with parallel construction?
I don't think so.
Okay. So like, this is actually something, like, I heard about it from a couple of people, but the person who gave like the best description of it, like this was years ago, was Derek Rose, when he was like uncovering things with the Stingray devices and stuff that were being used and whatever. But I think parallel construction is when you have somebody under surveillance, right, for some kind of, they get all these permits, to these FISA warrants and shit to surveil people for supposedly terrorism related stuff, right? But we all know that's nonsense. But when they're surveilling people and they're not able to find something that would allow them to turn that warrant into an actual indictment or further kind of thing, but during the course of surveilling this person, they did figure out that this person like might be a drug addict or might be involved in some other kind of crime that is not what their warrant is for. They will then go ahead and construct an entrapment, right, to catch the person for that, so that then they're still able to get in the house, which they were never able to get into with the FISA warrant, because the way they were surveilling them, the person never said, because they weren't terrorists or whatever, they were just harassing them, right? So they're able to parallel construct out of behaviors they know this person will take a scenario that might go even further beyond what that person would ever do. But the person thinks they're doing one thing when they're really doing another, because, they think they're just going to buy drugs from their dealer, but they've set up this false thing and it's like way more drugs than they were actually going there to buy, or, whatever kind of thing.
Right.
So parallel construction is setting somebody up for a completely separate crime that, or trying to entrap them about something that you never had any permission to be looking into them for the first place. Right.
Yeah. Because they're aware that most people are opportunists. That's the end of the day. I mean, most of them, they might be going to buy a bag of weed, but then when they get there, the dealer's like, oh yeah, you can either buy that ounce for $200 or I'll sell you a half pound for $500. Of course,
I got to get rid of it. I got to leave town. My dad broke his leg or whatever, right? And I got to get rid of this. I got to dump it.
Or even like at the place where they've set up this whatever, put something in there, that put something at that location that would then implicate them for the thing that they were trying to bust them before with the FISA warrant. Couldn't get all this kind of stuff, right? So it's basically creating a false reality in order, not just using an informant or like a sting operation. This is a step beyond that. It's like constructing a false reality. It's kind of similar to the, and I've talked about this before on the show, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but the shadows and echoes technique that they use in some of these things that everybody think are hoaxes, right? Are you familiar with the shadows and echoes technique?
No,
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's always a good refresher and see what you guys respond to, because what you're talking about sounds like the informational version of like real world stuff with this, right? So shadows and echoes, like, so I learned about this from like a weird a board I found myself on when I was digging into the Boston bombing, right? Because to me, the Boston bombing was always way more interesting than Sandy Hook. There was like way more things of interest to me going on at the Boston bombing than there were at Sandy Hook, right? And I found myself on this, like, you know those nights when you're just like going hard down the rabbit hole, especially because I was still a tweaker back then, I think. Yeah, I think that was the last year, right? So sometimes you find yourself on like page 126 of a thread on Godlike Productions or whatever.
Yeah.
You're chasing it hard. And there was a guy who just came in for a second and is like, blah, blah, blah. This is the technique they're using. I know from my past job. What he posted for like a couple of days information on this and then disappeared, never heard from again. Yeah. And I dug into this and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what's going on. So what they do is they like have you have a setup where you can create two versions of something that are close to each other, but the people at one version will never see the people at the other, right? So downtown Boston, you'll create this on one block over here, like on northeast of Harvard Square, and then another version on a southwest block. So those people will never cross each other. One is completely staged and fake. Like one is like you're just doing a drill. And the other one is almost 100% real, but with like one or two intrusions or insertions or infiltrations. Okay. And then are presenting footage of what happens to the public. You will show shots from both stage sets, pretend like they're one thing, and therefore create this really confusing scenario that never gets resolved, i.e. Tamerlan Tsarnaev was seen arrested with his hands behind his back naked and getting into the cop car, but at the same time, other people swear they saw him get run over by his own brother driving a car. Right. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev ran over his brother getting away from the scene. Right. So there was that. And then even the night that they caught Dzhokhar Tsarnaev in the boat, and there was that whole scenario.
I remember that, yeah.
There's two completely different sets of reports. Like one doesn't even seem like the people were looking at the same thing as what the other people were seeing. Same thing. Shadows and echoes. Just a few blocks away, not aware that this was also going on. And you can even see there's two Dzhokhar Tsarnaevs. The person that was on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine is not the person that was on the video camera caught downtown in Boston that day, or the person that was in the courtroom. That person is the same person. None of them are the person that the media is saying is Dzhokhar Tsarnaev with photographs before that day happened. Right?
Trippy, yeah. I'm glad I'm surprised I never heard of this, because this makes so much sense in so many scenarios.
So, I've never heard it called what she just called it, but Ole Damagard talks about this because he talks like the best one I heard him talk about was Charlotte, where that car ran into them protesters. Right. And like there was two separate cars where the windshield was busted in one, and then after it wasn't. It's because like Emily's talking about here, it was two literal scenarios and different things happened to these two different cars.
Yeah. So there was, so that there's also, I just had my mind just did the other thing that was going on at Charlotte. There's another technique being employed at Charlotte, and this was technique for propaganda, right? So the Charlotte thing happened really like close to the same time as like there was all these things that were happening at once around the same scenario. So one was you had the Harvest Festival happening in Las Vegas with the shooting at the exact same time that you had the Harvey Weinstein thing happen, right? On the other side of the Harvey Weinstein thing happened, you had the thing going on in Evergreen with Brett Weinstein, right? Brett Weinstein's wife's name is Heather Haying, and the girl who got hit by the car's name was Heather Heyer. So you have this very kaleidoscopic thing going on in the media where like things are registering in people's brain as the same thing, even though they're different, but only slightly different, but they're actually all part of the same propaganda campaign. That was like one, because remember the Brett Weinstein scenario, this was that all the students on the campus of Evergreen, right, particularly the minority students, were accusing him of being a racist because he believes in in biological, like in evolutionary biology, right? And that because he teaches that, he somehow was not being a good enough ally. That kicked off all of this weird, like super racial diversity, equity, inclusion. Everything has to be the magic word said right. Otherwise you're a white supremacist, even if you're like a lifelong leftist and, fought in the civil rights or whatever. Now there's plenty of problems with Brett Weinstein, as you guys have heard Danny and I go on and on and on about, I'm sure in a variety of shows, and that's connected to the Lex Friedman anal probe, but we'll get there later. Right. But that is, so he was experiencing what we call, since we're all like,
Lex is going to look even funnier when he goes running now.
Right. We call it reverse racism. But so Heather Haying is part of like the black people attacking, and the black people and their allies attacking the poor white professors at the liberal arts college across the country. Heather Heyer is being hit by the white supremacists at the alt-right Nazi march. And this is designed to create this level of like chaos and noise at the brain that cannot be separated by people.
Yeah, where you just can't figure shit out. Like it's
shock and awe on a simulacra level.
Can't figure shit out. There was also this guy, I can't remember his name right now. I thought about this not that long ago, and I was looking to see if his channel was still there. I can't remember what his name was. He was like a weird guy. Like he popped into the alternative media just for this thing, and then we never heard from him again. But he somehow figured out that like he was looking at the Charlottesville thing, right? And he figured out that there was a person shooting documentary footage that was like in place to get the money shots in a way that was like too perfect, right? That was too perfect. And he went through and did all of the like locations and this and so, like, there's no way that person would have known to be in exactly this spot and exactly this time with his camera pointed in exactly this direction if this wasn't a setup.
Makes me think of the French brothers on 9/11.
Yes, it's a similar kind of thing to that, right? And it was interesting. Like, I'm not going to get into the other story, but it was connected, the person that it was, right? So the person who was in this position, right? I had never heard or seen this person before. This person exposed them, right? But a little bit prior to this, sometime post Charlotte, but before these videos came out, I had like a really weird remote view about Charlotte, right? And in the remote view, I watched assets get together with their handler to decide how this was going to go down. And it was in like some kind of like school or community center kind of room. It was like those rooms that have like the folding tables and fluorescent lights and cinder block kind of wall, that what it looked like the Arts and Rec Center or your elementary school. And there was 3 people. There was like 2 younger person and then someone else who was giving them the instructions. And when I get a remote view like this, it's kind of like I'm like a fly on the wall or watching through the CCTV or something. And I clearly identified one of the people as Richard Spencer, right? I could see that one of the people was Richard Spencer, but I saw this other gentleman that I had never seen before and I did not know who he was. And when I fucking saw the video, when I saw this guy's video and he was saying, it's this person so-and-so who works for this news agency, I was like, oh my God, that was the guy from my remote view. Right. Drippy. And so like, it was confirmatory about the remote view, but also I observed this person closely now and watch what circles this person is trying to infiltrate and know what's really going on. And certain people who have, this person has infiltrated their realities and circles have taken falls or positions or like their work went off in a way that is like, oh, wow, that looks like something different than it used to look.
Right.
Right. And so it's very, but that there were so many things wrapped into all of these events, right? What you were saying about, I remember Joyce Riley 100%.
Yeah.
Right? And these people exist all throughout alternative media. And
they used to call it Patriot, like Patriot Media. And, you know, because, I mean, the whole idea of a truth movement has been around for a long time, but also the people trying to sound the alarm and trumpet the fact that the entire truth movement is completely canned. It's completely right out of a box. And it's true. I mean, but most people have a hard time wrapping their head around that. But I mean, I remember an old VHS tape where Eustace Mullins said, you know, the only people that join up with activist groups are intelligence agents. You know, that's the joke, you know, is that the only people that sign up and try to do something, you know, join the militia or whatever are, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's not real militias, but if you start a real militia, agents will join you and hang out, and then all of a sudden they'll come up with $3,000 to do something, you know, they want to, you know, maybe we should buy some explosives or whatever, you know, that's the kind of stuff that happens, you know.
So this one in particular, though, the Joyce Riley, like what you're saying, completely, I remember that Power Hour and
yeah. And I remember married to Dave Von Kleist. Dave Von Kleist did a bunch of weird disinformation videos exposing 9/11, which were, you know, there was a lot of truth in there, of course, but then there was a lot of weird steer off to one side, doesn't make any sense, pods under the wings of the planes.
Right, I remember the pods under the wings of the planes.
Yeah, you know, and Dave Von Kleist was married to Joyce Riley, and eventually he got in some kind of trouble and left the United States. I think somebody brought him into some kind of a legal issue where he was going to be better off to not be in the United States proper. And, you know, I think she's dead for sure. I think he might still be alive.
So you brought this in with the dinosaurs and the flat earth, right? And so the flat earth, so you made a statement, and this is funny that you mentioned this, because I saw like a post, either someone saying you said it or someone saying, or you saying it yourself. And like not that long before that, Danny Katz, my friend, I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of the cartoons she made. Also a cartoonist, and one of the greatest honors that you can have is when she makes a cartoon quote of something that you said, right? And so she had been here in Austin, and she was talking about like the flat earth movement and whatever, and she was completely shocked when I was like, yeah, I'm not into it. She's like, you're not? I'm like, no, I think it's square. And you had a post where you were talking about believing in the square earth too, right? So like she panicked that I was like buying round earth or something like that. Right? And I let her sit for a second. But like, to be quite honest, right? Like there's so many, like flat earth is another one of these things. It's just like made such a mess of. And, you know, like in my head, like, sure, like it's flat. It's also round. It does a lot of different things and whatever, right? But to the extent that it's flat, it really is more square or like a cube to me, right? Like in the sort of best model I've seen laid out, it isn't just like this flat, endless plane of whatever. And so you can get into some of these semantic arguments with this, but the way that the flat earth thing came in, right, for me, like, do you guys remember, unless either of you guys raised Christian? You might have been. Were you raised Christian?
I was, yeah.
Okay. So like,
I think Ben might have been too, but I don't think it took at all.
Were you raised Christian, Ben?
No. My mom, my parents, they weren't necessarily atheists, but no, they didn't. My mom became a Baptist pastor when I was an adult. So
okay, I didn't know. So I knew your mom was. I know you've talked about, you know, your mom's still holding out hope for your salvation.
Yeah, she hopes that, she's like, he will come to Jesus one day.
All right, so you were raised Christian. So from a young age, you probably heard that at least that there was a version of a flat earth that was part of the whole sort of religious whatever rhetoric about. I did not know that because I was raised completely without religion, completely. So whenever somebody, when I was a kid, brought up flat earth, like I just thought it was a joke. I didn't understand that there was people that actually believed that, right? And so, you know, I didn't like, when I would hear people joke about the Flat Earth Society and stuff like that, like, okay, it was like funny, but like I didn't really get it because I didn't understand that there was people that actually thought that. So right. So it was very like, I remember exactly when Flat Earth started coming into my feed, right? Because this was like a completely novel concept to me as anything other than a joke, right? I'm 100% certain I remember exactly when and how it came into my feed. And I mostly remember because of what preceded it coming into my feed by a few days. This was back before YouTube was completely controlled out algorithmically. This was like the early stages of that, right?
Wild West days.
Right.
Yeah, good old days.
And so I had something come into my feed that was like super duper interesting to me that led me down like probably in some ways like one of the most significant rabbit holes I think I've ever been down in terms of like how things actually work, with no ability the way the internet is now, or just even the way reality is structured by its nature for me to actually ever prove. But in my own head, and it only matters to me, I'm certain I got this one right. And what came into my feed a couple of days before the flat earth psyop started, because whether the earth is flat or not, the way it was presented was a psyop completely, right? We all agree with that, right?
No, that's what I try to tell people, that like, hey, look, yes, I do believe it's flat. I also believe around 2015, they really started pushing it really hard, and they have all of their little agents and shills and people ready to present a very specific version of it, you know, or 5 or 6 or 7 specific versions, but one, you know, the round map specifically, people, you know, there's a lot of things about that really works for people. So that one, you know, works. But I want to hear what you have to say, because I'm curious. I want to hear when it first came to you.
Okay, so what came into my feed somehow, like, again, I was a much better researcher when I was a tweaker, because I would follow it all the way down. I wouldn't get like tired, bored, and
no sleep, no stopping to eat. You know, I mean, you just go for it. You know,
follow every little clue, and every paranoia, you know, was fully like exposed and examined. But this video came up. I was like watching a video about something entirely unrelated. Remember when when there used to be the activity show part on YouTube where you could see what the people who you follow were watching? Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Right. So this was post that. I think that had recently just ended, but the recommendations and the things that came up, if you were watching a video, the things that came up underneath it were still really good. It wasn't obviously like packaged bullshit that they were trying to tell you, which would either be total bullshit that they want you to look at, or just more things you already believe, just to, you know, polarize you and further into a corner to later be controlled. This was not that yet. This was when
recommendations used to be good.
You
could really feed off of them.
So one came up in my thing about the concave Earth, right? And this guy named Lord Stephen Christ.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Absolutely batshit, but right, it doesn't matter. Like, you can be batshit and get something right, you know. Yep. But so I started watching, and I probably watched about 5 or 10 videos in a row, and the whether the Earth was concave or not quickly became not irrelevant to me, but like less of the point than anything else. Secondary. And it started me looking at a couple of things, and that he pointed to this, his whole thing was based on the works by this gentleman named Cyrus Reed Teed, who wrote a book in the 1800s or the early 1900s called Cellular.
Reed Teed?
Cyrus Reed Teed. Okay.
I think I remember that, yeah, because he's the one that did the experiment on the beach that supposedly shows that the sky curves up.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So Cyrus Reed Teed wrote a book called The Cellular Cosmogony, that described the idea that the Earth was concave, and we're actually living on the inner, like if the Earth was hollow on the inside, right, we're living on the inside of the crust as opposed to being on the outside. That we're living in the inner walls of this thing.
Right,
and
the sun and the stars and everything are in the middle,
inside
and we're on the outside.
Right. And that the belief in he literally had a saying, right, that belief in the Earth's concavity is equal to godliness. That was like one of his, or like awareness of the Earth's concavity is equal to godliness, right? Right. And I started reading about Cyrus Reed Teed and who he was and what he did. And he started to sound more and more to me like a 100 years ago version of David Koresh on some levels, right?
Okay.
The things that he did and believed and said, and then what ended up happening to him, was almost the same story. So what Cyrus Reed Teed called his belief system or whatever system of spirituality he'd come up with around this, he called it Koreshanity. 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 Okay. Now, that same week, after I had discovered this Koreshanity, all of a sudden, Eric Holder and Barack Obama stopped calling ISIS ISIS and started calling it Khorasan for 1 week. Do you remember when they stopped calling it ISIS? Khorasan? And Khorasan was spelled the same way. Okay. So I have this Koreshanity as belief in the Earth's concavity makes you God, right? And I have this whole thing going on over there. So I'm reading further into this stuff. I got to the point where I'm like, oh my God, David Koresh named himself David Koresh after Cyrus Reed Teed, who another way of saying Cyrus is Koresh, like the like Middle Eastern or whatever way to say it.
Yeah, I just went to his Wikipedia and that's what it says, Dr. Cyrus Teed, alias Koresh,
Koresh. That's who David Koresh was emulating. That's what they were. Their compound sounded quite similar to the compound that Cyrus Reed Teed was killed on.
I never knew this stuff. Trippy.
Like 100 years ago.
Wow.
Right? And that this was like, so like, okay, so now we kill people, like we go siege their compound when they believe that, when they're questioning the shape of the earth,
right,
or something. And this clue to about Khorasan, the reason they said Khorasan in the mainstream, this is just all my opinion. There's not any facts about this. This is all Emily making shit up. Okay. I'm just being clear with that. Not Emily said this and screw whatever. They're fucking hinting to their PSYOP master that these Khorasan people are back and you better get the fucking flat earth PSYOP going.
Okay. That makes sense.
That's like the public outcry. So,
because I do believe they have lots of things in mothballs waiting for the right moment, and they say, hey, we have to deploy that thing. You got to get that thing out.
They only called
it stage. Let's go.
They only called it Khorasan for 1 week. And then they went back to ISIL or ISIS or whatever it was. Literally for 1 week, Khorasan. The next week after Khorasan, there was no more concave earth videos in my feed. They were all flat earth videos, right? Okay. So whether the earth shape or not, to me, is not, it may not be that they were concerned people would think the earth was concave. They were concerned that people were going to start questioning where we were and what we were and all that stuff again. So time to get that version, the 9/11 stuff, the Sandy Hook stuff, that's all done. Time for this one, right? So then I started looking at this guy, Lord Stephen Christ, and he looked to me, and again, I'm making this up. He looked an awful lot like David Koresh. So I start doing some research into him, and he's from Waco, Texas. And I'm like, well, holy motherfucking lover of God, this kid is going to be one of the kids of David Koresh. And I'm following this track for like quite a long time. I can't get to the bottom of whether he was there or not, but I'm seeing all the signs and symbols and the amount of research one can do when they don't have a real name for somebody, right? That like, okay, like maybe I'm not like this kid, maybe this guy is the son of David Koresh, right? Or whatever, right? And so he's been arrested many times for things that seem like kind of crazy or whatever.
Well, yeah, he's kind of got like a megalomania, totally. Psychopathic. No, I wouldn't call it not psychopathy, but I don't remember. It's like delusions
of personality disorder.
Yeah, delusions of grandeur. Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying that the things he says are right or whatnot, but there's something. If you do look at his graphics though, the graphics
he's got beautiful graphics.
Beautiful. Like I've not seen, until I saw some of the graphics that FPV Angel make for their model, I had not seen any other equally as beautiful as the graphics that Steven made for his stuff, right?
Right.
So there's something in there that means enough to him for him to make it really beautiful, right? And we all have something like that we work on in a different way. We can be sloppy and messy and say dumb shit in every other way, but this is important to us. And so we're going to do it right. We're going to make it beautiful. We're going to make it informative and nice to look at.
Benjamin's got a model like that he's working on that is becoming more and more aesthetic and beautiful all the time, Right.
I have this book that talks it's called Why Beauty is Truth, right? Like
here.
Yeah. Okay. And so I've told this story before. right? It's not like, I don't know if I have everything exactly right, but there's something inside of me that this is like, knows that this is how intelligence actually works. This is how they hide shit. This is how they figure shit out. They have all of these like weird sort of ways that they signal to each other, and that they, you know, they go after people. Not necessarily like your person that you were talking about, the guy who was presenting all this information that the other person, Joyce, right? He may not have had everything exactly right, but he was beginning to look at stuff and question things in a way that would eventually lead people to the truth. Even if he got lots of things wrong, he was doing it in a way that would allow each individual to sort of work through a process.
There would be threads that you could pick up that would lead you to the hideout, you know. And that's what I mean. They did serious damage control with that guy, Emily. They had him come on 2020.
Right.
They tried to bait him to like one of the highest up government people said, look, we'll come pick you up with all your documents and we'll fly you straight to the steps of the White House.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they were like really trying to tempt him and bait him because he had enough information that they were not happy about it, you know?
So you have to create serious distractions in that road early on, because even if the person leading the movement, a person who was well-intended leading a movement, is wrong about some things based on their own personal biases or their personal shortcomings,
or just mistakes or whatever.
Whatever, there's going to be stuff there that people can pick up and eventually get to the end of the thread of beads, and here we are and whatnot. And to me, the way the flat earth thing was rolled out on top, I was like, oh, I see, like, I really see how this works. And so now whenever something comes out of nowhere, I'm looking for the concave earth and the Lord Stephen Christ and the Koreshanity and all the other stuff that underlies it that is being glossed over with a really simple package that's being offered to everybody.
Yeah.
That's the way Jason Lindgren feels like about Tartaria right now. He thinks that's an op that just is getting pushed.
Why does he? I agree with him 100%. Why does he think it's an op?
Well, you know, the idea that there was ever overwhelming empire that was benevolent, you know, that just somehow one day just fell. That just is some fairy tale shit for starts, you know. And then, yeah, I think he's more into the technology that we have today. I don't think.
Okay. I've never thought about. Well, I guess years ago, Randy and I did reach out to Jason. And it got kind of complex. I've never really thought about having a chat with him, but based on your saying that, maybe I should have a chat with him.
Good.
I think he's.
I saw that coming out, the mud flood Tartaria stuff, because a lot of us were really trying to get on to the Anatoly Fomenko stuff.
Right.
And his new chronology stuff. And there really wasn't much out there. And a lot of it was in Russian with subtitles.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff was disappearing as soon as you'd find it. So like you'd have to be downloading videos and not just bookmarking them. And then all of a sudden, here comes Mudflood and Tartaria stuff right behind Mudflood. And so I was suspicious at the time that maybe they were trying to parallel off away from just the more general study of chronology, with a focus on Fomenko. I mean, I don't know. I think Fomenko has a lot of interesting information, but I'm not sure that he's not some kind of an apparatchik himself, you know, like, because all of his ideas are, it's because Russia's so amazingly the best ever, you know. Underneath all of his conclusions are all like, well, obviously Russians were gods on earth and you guys fucked it up.
He's a pro-Putin propagandist for sure, right?
You know, but still that stuff, the same kind of thing happened, you know. Like,
well, and Putin is, and the Tartaria thing, Putin did put out that map that had Tartaria on it. And when I studied Tartaria, it's actually a pre-Mongolian tribe. There's some artwork and artifacts. They were really very simple. Small tribe, really wasn't much to it, you know. And so that Putin put out the Tartaria thing also. That's very interesting.
What do you think, Benjamin? Like, Jason thinks it's a psyop. What do you? And you just told me a little bit about why. I want to know what you think, and then I'm going to tell you what I think.
Well, yeah. Again, it was a pre-Mongolian tribe, you know, from that basic area. They weren't advanced. So I'm not saying that there hasn't been advanced energy systems and civilizations that used better, for lack of a better word, technology. They had more beneficial technology that wasn't so predatory. I'm not saying that that didn't exist, but basically the idea of an overwhelming empire is no different than fucking Star Trek. Like this beneficial, like all these people are just awesome, and the basics of humanity. I mean, I'm a firm believer that there's no growth without pain, and there's no growth without hardship. And so the idea that we could ever have this society that was just completely benevolent and awesome, and everybody just lived and everybody just had like super high technology and shit, that's some Gene Roddenberry shit.
The Golden Age. They're always the Utopian Golden Age is always like a key thing in all of human history. They're always talking about that we're either trying to get back to it or we lost it. It's just, and we're all idealists at heart to some degree. I mean, some more than others, obviously, but everybody has that, fuck, wouldn't it be great if things were blank? I mean, that's just a part of human nature, so it's easy to lead us around that way, in my opinion,
Wouldn't it be great if my muscles got bigger without me ever having to lift weights and go through the pain of tearing those muscles, so that way they can get filled back in with new material and become bigger in the natural way? I just like them just to be bigger and sit home and eat some milkshakes.
Yeah, milkshakes to muscles, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Isn't there one of those called muscle milk or something like that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I think, so both, all the things you said, I think are part of it, right? And also, I think Utopia would be boring as fuck. I think, right? Like, if what happened?
We lost it.
Just dropped out.
Okay.
You said that.
It was just the camera.
Said,
that was
my wife said, she said that Emily Moyer, fuck that lady.
She slapped the camera.
Fuck you.
Hey, how are you?
Wonderful. How about you?
Good. Nice to see you.
You too. I'm enjoying your conversation.
Awesome. Okay. So all the things you get, but yeah, Utopia would be fucking boring. We've all been on that, had that experience of like, we can't wait to go on vacation. We get there like, I want to be on vacation forever. And then after a week, you're like, get me the fuck out of here. I want to go home. Like it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We would be dumb. We would be bored. We would definitely be fat and lazy. And then there wouldn't be there wouldn't be that, like, I love it when I hear how much everyone loves Benjamin. If everybody was smart and handsome and charming and nice and had high fidelity in the way that they showed up compared to how they were on screen, then like there would be nothing that separated anyone from anyone else, right? It would be this homogenized society, right? Which is when you hear about like when people talk about, oh, there was a one world civilization, you see a pyramid here and a pyramid there, and at one time we were all like brown with red hair and tall and or whatever the fuck it was. It's like it's not really that far off from like transhumanism, and man is going to be able to erect in one day these machines that took everyone else forever to fucking build, right? It's not, it's just like it's just got like older clothes on, right? It's the same fucking story. It's just like it's like if you go into someone's house that has like a bunch of like weird antique stuff, a hoarder that has antiques versus like a hoarder that has like new crap from Walmart. It's still a house mostly full of junk, but like, whatever, it looks different, right? So my thing with the Tartaria is I actually think it's there to demoralize people, one, to think that like we are stupid. The people who came before us were so much smarter than us. They didn't need to have toilets. They didn't need to have outlets in their walls. They built these incredible buildings that look like my psychedelic dreams. Like, we are midgets. They were tall. We are short. We are dumb. They were smart. It's demoralizing, and it prepares people to accept something like virtual or augmented reality because they'll never be able to do that on some level. But also, and this goes for lots of our friends who are smarter than the average bear and don't fall for levels 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the conspiracy, but do fall for level 6 of it, right? Is that everybody's running around looking for old shit, right? Meanwhile, invisible cities, Pythagorean palaces that, are, like, lead to invisible cities are being constructed all around us. And everyone's like, that's stupid new shit. It's dumb. It's smart cities. It's like, it's ugly. It has no soul. It looks like a piece of a computer or whatever. I'm like, motherfucker, those things are doing shit. I don't know about you, but when I look at my city, I see a fucking symphony. This shit looks like it's erecting an orchestra around us that is going to like harmonize us into some other layer of reality. You can think that that's good, bad, or whatever.
100%.
But if you know how that shit works, you can use that to your benefit. And if you're running around looking for shit from the 1600s or the 1300s or whatever, and you're like, yay, I found a piece of pottery with that symbol on it in the dirt. I have found it. What have you fucking found? A piece of pottery with the symbol on it in the dirt. Like meanwhile, all this other shit around and everyone's like, that's new stuff. I don't like it. I like old stuff. I'm moving out to the farm to do the, like, no, nothing against people who know how to do the farm. You know how to do it, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like this stuff that's coming up all around us is like on some level equal opportunity. If you know how it works and you can understand it, you can fucking use it. This is the least hierarchical society. Like, yeah, we have dumb fucks that we're like, oh, there's a billionaire class and whatever. But like, if you know how to use technology and if you have trained your mind to be able to understand geometry and physics and poetry and music, the quadrivium, the trivium, like most of the people that I know, they know there is a trivium and a quadrivium, and they even know what the subjects of those things are. They can name all 7 to you, but they don't actually understand the subjects. And if you understand the subjects, then you can see the symphony that's being conducted all around you, that everybody's like, no, that's new. I want to go find a Tartarian building. And the other thing is, if you're convinced that the height of this architectural phenomenon is that the way you identify it is you find a building that has one floor sunken below, where like there's windows underneath the ground. So there's like a hidden floor that you don't, kind of thing.
Right.
That's how you know there was a mud flood. It precludes you from thinking that there's possibly an entire other building facing down the other way into another world leading into the ground. If you're just looking for floor 1, you're not like, well, shit, this building is 86 stories high. I wonder if it goes 86 floors down too. And we're living in complete mirror world, right? Everyone's like, yay, I found floor 1. Let's have a party. I'm like,
no, I agree that people don't. I don't know. This when you were talking about it just now, Emily, it reminded me of. We started to watch The Dark Crystal. We didn't watch it, but the new Dark Crystal, and the wise old lady, Agra is her name. And in like the second or third episode, they reveal that they intentionally gave Agra the planetary model and the telescope so that she would look up and get distracted by staring off into space so they could steal the fucking crystal and take its power. And to me, it's the same thing that you're describing, that they keep dishing out all of this stuff. Like literally they've got 1,000 things a week for us nowadays to get distracted by in every category, just like we talked about at the beginning. There's so much more information now than there used to be that I didn't even know what brand new people to this kind of bullshit are doing. Like they must just drown because there's just so much. You used to be able to keep track. I used to have like maybe 30 or 50 very reasonably well-organized bookmark folders. Now I've got so many bookmark folders and there's so much shit in some, and some are empty because I only put one thing in there. And I don't go back and cross-reference it. I don't write an article about it. I don't have it composed into like a slideshow or anything that I can even tell you anything about, because I'm just grabbing so much information, but it's all coming at me so fast. I'm not effectively doing anything with it,
Yeah.
So what you just said, someone in my, one of my chat groups, right, presented me information. When someone doesn't tell you anything you don't already know, but they present it in a way that you haven't heard it presented before, and you're like, oh my God, like that could be you're staring us in the face. So shout out to you, Jana. I think you just met Jana at Flatober Fest, Ben. Southern accent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, she gave me Sarnets around since I saw her. I'm wearing 4 pants. I can't take them out. It was cold as shit last night.
So you got
a string of garnets she gave me.
Oh, string of garnets. Okay, you got slow motion for a second. We couldn't understand what you said. But
robot on it.
Gotcha. Okay. So Jana says to me I thought this was really interesting. She correlated, she's like, did any of y'all ever hear about the Mandela effect before they passed the repeal of the Smith-Mundt Act? And I started to think back.
That's interesting.
Okay. So I started to think back and I was like, well, okay. Because when you come from like MK La La Land like I do, and you've had activity in that realm, like Mandela effect, we didn't call them that, but there was definitely like attempts to, there's technologies that change reality that make you think that like you're crazy because you remember something being some other way. So I'm like, okay, I had to think hard, and I'm like, did I have any Mandela and any things like that I wouldn't just consider like part of MK mind control, like individually, right before? And I was like, no, those things stopped happening at a particular point, right, in a certain way. And this, I was able to like identify when that was based on where I was living, and then where I was living what was going on when I first heard the term Mandela, when people first started talking about like Berenstain Bears and Mirror Mirror on the Wall and all that kind of stuff, right? Like those were like the first really big, like talked about ones in a conspiracy reality, right? And I remember where I first heard that, and I remember when that was. And the Smith-Mundt Act was either passed in 2011 or 2012. I can't remember.
It's 12, yeah, 12 or 13, right there.
So that was basically the Smith-Mundt Act originally had said you cannot produce, you cannot disseminate intentional propaganda domestically, but you can do it in foreign countries like Air America. Right. And then they repealed that. So no, that was happened just before there started to be this topic publicly and memed around about this. So then I thought, well, it would be really, really interesting if all of us who are like deeply into one topic, right? So whatever your main topic is, you go back and you make a timeline of when you thought what, and see if there was a qualitative difference in how you think about those things after the date of the Smith-Mundt Act repeal. And I think all of us, like if, Crow with his, whatever he thinks about the sky, and, whoever's like John Levi with his, old world or Tartaria stuff, and so with this topic, and whatever topic that has been big for a long time in the conspiracy media, planes, no planes, whatever, the hollow earth, flat earth. If in that line of conspiracy, where were what was the progression of your thinking, right? And where was like the most significant shift, right? And what came along at the same time as Smith-Mundt Act was the shift from people thinking things were false flags to thinking they were hoaxes.
Right.
From believing that people died to thinking that nobody died in some of these things, right? Like, and a whole host of other type of things, right? So if everybody took their topic and just mapped out a chronology of how their thinking has gone over the years, and we all check and saw what happened at the end of 2012 or in that period where that, and when, I think we would find a significant that there was a ripple at that time for everybody.
Yeah, like Smith-Mundt is the speed bump, and we all went over it,
Right. You know what I mean? Like but she and she did it.
Like the propaganda that got released was a little deeper than what we would have initially thought.
And that we're not as smart about recognizing propaganda as we think we are, because we like to think we have it all figured out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's something I've been telling people for years is like, hey, if it's us sitting on the internet together as a small group versus the most well-funded intelligence agencies, then obviously they're going to have a pretty good shot at making us believe whatever the fuck they want, because they are experts at spycraft. They've got huge budgets, deep pockets for days. So if they want us to believe something and they decide to apply their resources to that, there's a good chance we're going to fall for it, folks. I mean, I know we've gotten good at figuring out a lot of things, but having that kind of resources against somebody, we're under the subjection of an enormous power.
So when Jana said this to me, she said it like completely just like very casually off the cuff, like, hey, did you catch that game on Sunday night? She just said it like she wasn't presenting some grand idea. It just rolled off like, something simple. And I was like, this is actually really interesting. And then I remembered also, I read an interesting paper a few months back where this was like during the heat of that, like deep into the Alex Jones trials here and stuff, right? This person was revisiting Cass Sunstein's paper on cognitive infiltration, right? And basically saying that, like, oh, it was Cass Sunstein who introduced this idea of the events not being real. Like, this was what he was talking about when we needed to cognitively infiltrate. Like, people were expecting, in fact, Alex Jones told us, okay, they're going to cognitively infiltrate and they're going to convince you that this political move is good or that political move is good or why this is important or that. Like, nobody thought that they would introduce an idea about things being real or not real. Like, we thought the propaganda would be political or social in nature, not like this like deep-seated superstition, right? It's almost like a religion. The people who think that everything is real or nothing is real. It's like the most extreme wings of religious sects, right? And then so he went through some of the quotes from the Cass Sunstein thing and was like basically trying to make the argument, right, that that Cass Sunstein was sort of like creating this scenario that these certain people that showed up in these movements that introduced these ideas at that time, knowingly or not, were agents of Cass Sunstein's cognitive infiltration, right? And so this kind of goes along with what Jana said, because that's all in the same time frame, right? Sandy Hook was that year, and Boston Bombing was that year.
That's freaking fascinating.
Yeah, no, I've told a lot of people that they need to at least recalibrate the way they look at media. That way, even if they're just in the normie sphere, which is fine, but you need to realize that significant change in the legal side of it made a huge impact because it drops the liability they have.
Right.
They can't be held accountable in a big way. And so if you're not going to get cuff slapped on you or get $1 million fine, and then you have means, or especially if someone, they change the law and then someone's like, hey, we'd love to put 500 million in your account, but there's some things we need you to do. Well, that's going to happen. And we've seen it happen. I mean, it's very obvious.
You don't even necessarily, there doesn't even have to be a money thing. It's like you do one fake thing, right? And you let the conspiracy theorists run wild with it. Just do it once. And it can be even minor or off to the side. It can even be just one part of the shadows and echoes technique. And then that idea is going to be at play every single time going forward. Just like what I said earlier about once they showed us a not real picture of the earth, everybody's questioning whether dinosaurs are real or not, whether blah, everything.
Right. Exactly. It spreads out across all the different categories. Yep. Like you said, with a hoax. Like, I remember telling people, like, conspiracy shit's getting really weird because it used to be that there was a JFK conspiracy, but now the conspiracy is that JFK faked his death and became Jimmy Carter, and used a blood pack in the car, and Bill Hicks is actually Alex Jones, and like, did you guys hear the one that that Jim Morrison faked his death and he was actually
Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, Rush Limbaugh, and on down.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow, but the pictures are actually convincing, right?
It's a pretty trippy theory, really. It is.
Dude, and then the ones that go around pushing that every girl is a boy.
Yeah, I've seen people say that The Rock and Mike.
I was going to bring that up earlier.
Tyson and The Rock are females.
Yeah.
What? Like, come on, guys.
I'm pretty sure these people are very confused sexually. Is what's going on? They're like.
That's what I was going to bring up earlier, is like the one, like, I believe some wacky shit, especially if it's like, if it's ultra wacky and I made it up, I kind of like it. Right.
Yeah.
It's far out there. Like, I've been out there to like the edge of the rings of some of these ideas. I love that. Right. And so if somebody I'm perfectly willing to believe something that's batshit, right? Especially if you can make an entertaining case for it. Because if it doesn't turn out to be right, then I was highly entertained and I like the way you think. But when, I remember the first time I ever saw any of these transvestigations videos, right? That's what they call them, transvestigations.
Yeah.
And like, there was a few that the first person to present the idea was presenting it in a semi-reasonable manner, right? And then it exploded into this, oh, like every girl is really a boy and every boy is really a girl. Like that, that's the secret of the high mystery schools, is that everybody is really the opposite of what they are, right? You know, and it was like, and at a certain point, like the people who believe this, like they really believe it. And like, I just couldn't anymore. Like looking at how silly some of these evidences were that people presented to me, actually, like, I don't know if this was just a reflex, like I'm going to be oppositional intentionally. So I'm going to like believe something I don't really believe just to be opposing that thing that sounds ridiculous and stupid.
Right.
But it actually had me like starting to walk back one of my own theories where I had proposed some things about the Williams sisters, right? Because like the evidence is that they were using, like I'm not saying, I think there's definitely funny business afoot with the Williams sisters. I think there's all kinds of shit that goes on with gene therapy and like cross species hormone shit with athletes, whatever. Right. But it's just too simple to say Serena Williams is a dude. It's too simple. Like that wouldn't be a fun one for them to pull off. It needs to be far more like exotic than that. Right. And so, but that's how silly, like some of the conspiracies have gotten so silly that like sometimes I find myself like walking back to Normie land and I'm going, is the propaganda starting to work on me? Do I think that like presenting and no, it's not that. It's just that some of this shit has gotten so clown show that it's like anything is better to believe than that, right?
Full circle, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There was some the thing you said about the Jim Morrison as Rush Limbaugh, like that photo match side to side is actually pretty good, right?
That's fantastic.
It's a trip. It is. It's a trip. And he had the cochlear implants because his hearing was bad in his old age, and so then you're thinking, is that because he was not? There was no hearing protection on stage in the 60s with the loud rock and roll amps, and so it gets you thinking,
Right. But that is once somebody has decided that Jim Morrison is Rush Limbaugh, like, then they don't have to do the harder work of looking at the Dave McGowan material and starting down a road that is dark and mysterious and not very satisfying because you don't get the answers, but is actually a more fair representation of how reality really is.
Right.
And if you get too close to the bottom of that rabbit hole, you're going to end up with sudden onset fast lung cancer, where you get diagnosed on Tuesday and die on Thursday.
Exactly.
Basically, right? Like that, the people who we've been fed clown world order propaganda when we think that like somebody serves us up like ready to present conspiracy and then gets off. No, it's when somebody opens up one of these weird doors, right?
Yeah, and you go off down it forever.
Right? Those are the ones that get taken off the board, and nobody really talks about that so much. Right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think this whole conversation that three of us are having really does stick with the veering and paralleling idea, because they they want to give you something to parallel off on. They want to get you off on it's a red herring technique, right? They want you to get off of the scent of whatever. That's the other thing I warn people when they start to get into serious research. I tell them, don't get onto anything that's current events and start naming names and looking for shit, because you can get, I tell them, you wouldn't hit, if you saw Godzilla rise up out of the sea, you wouldn't run over and hit him on the pinky toe with a fucking ball peen hammer, because it's Godzilla. You'd be smart. You'd think, oh, geez, that's dangerous. I should run,
Yeah.
But you can you don't want to stumble into someone's actual organized crime, especially in a really dark occult area, and be lifting up corners, carpets and sniffing around. You don't have the resources. We don't have the resources to be fucking with people who are doing crime.
So I know
entertainment and curiosity, but not,
So I'm not going to go far into this or name any names, but I think I told you this the first time you and I talked. I know someone through my family who died, likely because they stumbled onto the kind of scenario that our community is sure somebody else died because they were exposing, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like somebody did die in that scenario. And it's not a person who knew what was going on. It's a person who accidentally found himself where that was going on. And they found him a few days later and put him in the river. right?
Yeah, like Mena, Arkansas. That's what happened. That's why those
Right.
kids ended up on the railroad tracks, because
They end up dead
in the wrong
because
place at the wrong time.
they end up dead because they don't know what's going on. Generally,
Right.
if you know what's going on, you don't usually find yourself in the scary place at the scary moment, right? You would know to like stay 40 feet back and like
Right.
a telescope or whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
But when you find yourself right in the middle of it, it's generally because you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's always
You're naive or ignorant, or you're unlucky, you know.
Yeah, like if you've ever been to prison, if there's anything going on, if there's anything going to go on, you immediately, all of a sudden, all the inmates just all of a sudden start migrating away. Like just like they know without even seeing it, some shit is about to go down right here, and I'm going to go be somewhere else. And then
that's right, you make some space. Yeah, I mean, we all know that vibe or that feeling of two people you know are already kind of outlaw natured get together, and they're either being really happy or really unhappy. You just give them a whole bunch of room, and you might even go at an earshot so that you are, at an ear and eye shot, so that you are not liable to any kind of report. Like, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, I don't know anything, because I know what kind of people those are, and I know what happens. They start having an uproarious drunken conversation. Well, I'm gonna leave. I don't want to be there,
Yeah.
If biker gangs show up, I'm leaving. I'm not hanging out. We're not hanging out and drinking at the barbecue with the Gypsy Jokers or the Hells Angels. Sorry, I'm not. It's not personal. But I can't kick it.
The second
I gotta get out of here.
The Hells Angels came up in my show with Michael this morning. I don't think I've ever talked about the Hells Angels ever before in the show in all the years, and it's on both shows today. So, all right. Speaking of Hells Angels and places you don't want to be when shit goes down, Benjamin.
Along with the Hells Angels, pretty good.
Me too, but if they all show up drunk with flying their colors, I'm still leaving, Ben.
Ben, you were just at Flatober Fest, right?
Yep.
I'm just kidding when I compared that to places you don't want to be when shit goes down or the Hells Angels.
Or the flat earthers show up, you got to get out of there, man.
Right?
Get out of there.
Let's do a little shop and a little inside baseball before we wrap it up. So, how was Flatober Fest?
Oh, Flatober Fest was fantastic. So many just smiling, happy people. Just insane. The sharing that everybody was doing with each other was just absolutely epic. I had a horrible trip to get out there, and it made it all worth it. It was so amazing. I met so many awesome people, and then I was nervous as hell with giving my presentation, and that went over real well. It just changes the level of things, you just like I've had dinner with Emily. When you actually exchange that energy and sit with a person, now it's like we are definitely friends. And like even any little discomfort that I would have had before, just because I don't really know this chick, but we do an interview, but it's just no, now we're friends, and there's no we can laugh around the whole nine, and that just sets that into motion for the entire community, and it was absolutely awesome.
Have they? So, like I've never been to Flatober Fest, but like lots of people I know have been, and I have heard reports, and this, that, and the other thing. Has it grown up in terms of like, for a while it felt like some of the core people or ideas, it was like the earth is flat, duh, and if you don't believe that, you're just fucking stupid. And there was really advanced ideas as to like, why is it important? Like just the earth is flat as an idea is not important. It is flat. Why? In service of what? Like what is the function that the earth is doing that requires that it be flat, that it is flat, so that when someone says, no, it's round, you dummy. No, this is actually something that goes on around you all the time that couldn't be going on around Earth. And it is flat for a purpose, because that's the backdrop of this generated reality, right? and I don't mean generated as in fake, but like the physics, mechanics, and the way things work. And I know you showed me a little bit when we were chatting. I don't know if we were just having a Zoom chat or if it was when you were on my show or Moving Spiders, but you showed me some of your drawings about what you were doing with the galvanic battery and like that whole kind of thing. And that's really much more like, it is not my main topic. And for a long time, I failed to find anybody's argument interesting enough to, like, even if they were right, I need the story to be good. I need there to be some story that I care about, and I need to be able to make sense of it in my own life. And when I stumbled upon the FPV Angel stuff, like that was the closest I had come to something that was meaningful for me. And I'm sure there's other models that are a similar kind of thing. I'm sure they've got some things wrong, a lot of things right, others vice versa. But that is more of this kind of model that I'm talking about. When you showed me your drawings, it looked like you were going to a similar place. And so are the people who are going to Flatober Fest, is that what they're wanting now, as opposed to just like Earth is flat, dum-dums, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's and in fact it's diversified, because then she brought me in where I'm not really like, for me, we live in the cosmic egg. We live on a fairly flat plane, but it's the plane of inversion, or the plane of inertia. And then you got like Austin Whitsitt talked about magnetic fields, and talked about your Jeremiah in the Bible. And there, I don't know what he talks about. Those people, like when I stepped in there, they all started like lighting up a cross with some gasoline when they saw me. So I don't know what the fuck that was about. So honestly, the only one that I would have called that gave a presentation that I would have said, because Jason Lindgren did a presentation on UFOs, which actually is kind of a taboo subject in the flat Earth world, because it's for most people, myself included, we live in a sealed system. So UFOs then, well, he wasn't really presenting that they have to come from outer space. It's just an unidentified flying object that doesn't, you stating that it's an unidentified flying object does not mean where it came from. Like, it could have came from under the ground. I don't fucking know. It popped in out of another dimension. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, come up out of the ocean is a good theory,
Yeah. So
there's a couple of iterations of what people think of as UFOs that it in no way offend a sealed system or a cosmic egg. Right. Cosmic egg, a lot of the best graphics I've seen about cosmic egg are in some ways quite similar to some of the graphics that Lord Stephen Christ made for his sort of concave Earth stuff, just in terms of the level of like harmony inside you feel when you look at these graphics, which means that there's a degree of truth to them. And in a sealed system, to me, the UFO, sure, it could be coming from the water or whatever, but I think it's an outward visualization or projection of watching our own brain synapses fire and move, and like, like things sort of almost like the dome up top, the ceiling, the rounded dome up top is actually like us looking at the inside of our own head, like our own dome. Right. And it's just
that's a common theory I've had, Emily, is that the whole manufacture of space, quote unquote, the way that they've given it to us, that it's a allegory for what we know as astral and inner travel.
Right.
And so I think it somehow empowers them to give us this reified material version of it, and then people work with it and they imagine it as if real.
Yes.
And my theory is that opens space for people that are working in astral travel, remote viewing, whatever they're doing, where they're intentionally going into what we call the archetypal realm or whatever, into the ether. And I think the fact that they've got everyone as an egregore working on space models, that somehow supplies and creates access that wouldn't be there otherwise, and that's the real reason, that it's not just to tell a lie and fool everybody. It's because the 100%. Lie creates one thing, and then it opens a door, and now there's space, literally space, where it shouldn't be, or where it wouldn't be otherwise.
Well, that also, but it also, the idea that we're exploring space could also be like a metaphor for like the brain mapping program or like hyperdimensional consciousness. And so anytime you can get people to externalize something, it opens it up wider. You can look at it from different perspectives and dimensions, right, internal, and it gives different access points. The other way that I see UFOs in a sealed system is that just because we're in a sealed system doesn't mean that there aren't other ones out there, right?
Right.
But these things that are sealing them, it's more a frequency or a vibrational barrier. And if you know how to match the resonance of something, you can move through it, right? So these could be technologies or even beings that have absolutely mastered control of their endocrine system to the point that they can generate a hormone or make little alterations in their own chemicals and physics and whatever, that they're literally able to become one with and move through anything that they kind of confront, right? And so I think that there's a high degree of like physics and mathematics involved with being able to move through realities like that. And what we may be seeing is just some sort of like representation or avatar of these consciousnesses. But these are beings with like a high degree of ability to control their own physiology, their own biology. It's like a biological, spiritual technology kind of thing, right?
And we see this over and over again, like in Dune. What do they call them? In Dune, the weird creatures that are able to bend space. There's a name for them.
Oh yeah, the Spacing Guild.
The Navigator Guild or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
The Navigators.
Guild Navigators, right? Okay, so
what show is this? What is this in?
Dune.
I haven't seen it. Okay.
Oh, and
what?
Emily, I finished listening, just so you know, as a personal aside. Yeah, that's really. I'm shocked that you've never.
I gotta leave
Dune.
now. I can't take this kind of shit.
You thought Dinosaurs being fake was going to offend him. Now he's going to log off.
Dang!
I haven't watched Dune.
He's going to go watch The Sound of Music.
Yeah. But no. So we went. I remember when I first started listening to Gravity's Rainbow by Thomas Pynchon, I told you that it so encompasses so many things that we're all involved in, but things that I remember I messaged you because I had like a personal vibration, like, oh my God, Emily Moyer needs to know.
Well, touch someone.
Yeah, I did exactly. It's like I need to call her on the phone. But I finished the book, and I probably listened to it more than once in my lifetime. I might listen to it 3 or 4 times. It's completely batshit insane. Like the way I've been describing it to people is it's like Finnegan's Wake. You know how people talk about Finnegan's Wake as being this really convoluted, poetic, hard to understand, but you get sucked in, and people get sucked in and study Finnegan's Wake their whole life.
Yeah.
Right. So I would compare it to that, only I would add that like the author writing it has like intrusive, horrible thoughts that they're not controlling. So you still have this whole flow stream of consciousness, but then all of a sudden there's like really horrible snuff film, BDSM, pedophile bullshit. And like it goes off for a minute into this, like, you're like, what the fuck am I listening to? You know, like sometimes when you're driving and like your audiobook comes on in your car and you're like, that's kind of embarrassing. Like I would be mortified. Some of the things that are in this book are so atrociously bad, like as bad as they can be bad. But I mean, it still fits into the whole thing because it, it ties into MK Ultra, it ties into the way that mind control, those programs and intelligence work, tie into remote viewing, all that stuff. I don't have to explain it to you guys. You guys already know. But anyway, I don't know. Now I got off on a tangent because I couldn't help but not remind you that there is a big pot of gold waiting for you.
All right, I'm gonna add it to my pile of books to be read. I think let's give Benjamin the last word because you and I have had so many, Sean. And
for sure.
Wrap it up for the evening.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I don't got no other words.
No words. We're all out of words. I think we got a lot of words into about 2 hours here. Like this was kind of like nonstop chitter chatter, like ongoing. I don't think there was like a silent second until Ben was like, I'm out of words. So I think what I'm going to do with this, I didn't want to stop the flow of conversation because it was so good. So I didn't take a break and separate. So I think I'll put it out for the patrons and stuff first, and then put it out publicly, because I think this was a cool conversation and everyone will enjoy it. So I think
I'll do. Oh wow, because that's weird. Because on the second hour, I was probably going to talk about how guys named Koresh like to take and swallow trucker nut for free. I don't know. That's I wondered what Emily thought about that. That is one thing I've been thinking about a lot. You know, like, do they like it when the truckers don't shower and they've been driving and have like 3 days worth of vinegar nuts? You know, because it seems like guys like Koresh would just get right in there into the gooch with it. You know, like that's what I've heard about dudes like that. I don't know what you think, Emily.
He was wanting to tell this story, ask this question so badly that there isn't a conspiracy he wasn't willing to wedge that question into. Because when we pre-showed, the person he was going to say it in regards to is completely different than the one he said it in regards to. But I see the connection. Everything's connected. We're all one, and you know. All right, guys, where can people find you if they want more of this insanity?
Well, all of my links are easiest to find on sbalger.com. There's a lot of rambling information there about me. It hasn't been updated recently, but you know, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. You can find me at any of those places. I hang out on Twitter sometimes, and I just sit around and shit post anymore. I haven't been doing anything productive for a long time, but I keep promising myself I'll get back there. So
you're much closer to the promised land than all of us who are like busting our tails. Benjamin, what about you?
My main platform is Rockfin, where I do my first hours on YouTube and all the different podcasts and Odyssey and all that. My second hour is only on Rockfin. I just had a really good pro come out, and I was just obviously on Flatober Fest. So go check that out. I presented the biochemical universe, which, biochemical electrical universe. And so it really, I was working on figuring out how the luminaries fit into the system that matches as above, so below the human body, because it's figuring yourself out. That's the biggest thing. And everything else matches, you know, the way we all talk about how the universe is fractal. Well, we are built the same as the universe. And so I was putting that together. I thought I did a pretty excellent job. The spiders helped.
It's great. You got to check it out, people. It's great. It's great. I'm glad you just clipped it and published it. Was it Karen B?
Karen B.
Yeah, so you can find it easy now. Is it on your channel too, man?
No, it's going to be, okay. We just haven't put it out because she's given me a better, more up close video with all the bells and whistles. And I don't, we all know me. I don't know nothing.
Okay.
It'll be awesome.
Right. I look forward to seeing that. And I think you just said before we got started that I'm going to do a show with you and James from Grounded. Everybody's requesting I be with James from Grounded Extract. So I've found a myriad of ways to pair up with James over the course of the next few who I haven't met yet.
It's hilarious because as soon as I said something to Emily, because Jonah that I met at Flatober Fest had asked that she see that you two go to get on a talk together, and so I brought it up right when and then you're like, yeah, other people have too. So just so you know, I brought it up with Emily right away.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So, all right. Well, awesome. We'll have to do this again sometime. Yeah, for sure. And I just so for I don't know that everybody in my audience is super familiar with you, Sean. Sean is conducting a silent fight in the background on behalf of all of us and having something stolen from us. And one day he will be able to tell us all about it. So we look forward to that. Yeah, we'll have that conversation then. I'd love to have each of you back individually as a pair. Sorry, Jim, you missed this one. It was a lot of fun. Hope your hand isn't getting tired, and we'll see you next time. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.